So it okay. Thank you. Actually, I thank the Hindustan Institute of Technology for providing a good opportunity to present my small research on magnetocaloric materials, advanced materials for magnetic cooling. So, shortly, I will give some explanation about what is a refrigeration. So, basically, and from that, I will start what is different types of refrigeration available. And in the different types of refrigeration, so we will particularly focus on magnetic refrigeration. And what is we will see what is the basic physics on magnetic refrigeration, and from that we can see how what are the material used for the magnetic refrigerations, and how we can prepare the material and how the measurements have been taken, and finally we can conclude with some small topics. Good afternoon to everyone. So usually everyone knows that what is a refrigeration. So it is a kind of process. Actually, it removes the heat from the substance and it expels out to the environment. Okay. So a refrigeration, you might have aware that you have a refrigeration in home and in industries and a variety of it in shops and everywhere. So in everywhere, if you see the refrigeration, it is a gas-based refrigeration. So initially, if you see there is a in ancient days, if you see there are artificial refrigeration and natural refrigeration. So in ancient days, they use a natural refrigerations. So here uh, we can see there are two kind of refrigeration system, and one is a natural method and another one is a artificial method. So actually in natural method, so the people will utilize the ice or snow to make a cool any kind of substance, so below to the room temperature. And in 1970s, suppose if in earlier days 500 BCs, so they use ice house, so in order to store the material to cool the substance, even vegetables and fruits and whatever maybe. So this figure which shows the ice house. So actually this ice house, if you see in the top, it is totally insulated. Some ice house it will be under the bottom of a earth. So they may dig some depth, some 5 or 10 kilometer in depth, and they keep the ice. When winter season comes, then they will collect the ice from the river and lakes, and they will store it inside. And with that, they use the substance to cool the materials. Okay, so in early days, and the first artificial refrigeration, which comes around some 1740. So this is discovered by William Cullen, a Scottish scientist. Actually, what he decided is when you make a rapid heating of a material, and he suggests that when you make a rapid heating, so it makes a rapid heating, and if you stop the heating, so due to some orifice, so the material it gets cooled. So that is a initial plan he made it, and throughout the year, so this is the only principle we are adopting in the refrigeration systems. And now we can see what is different types of artificial refrigeration or mechanical refrigeration. So usually in artificial refrigerations, so what we will do is we will remove heat from the cold place and we make evaporate. So we will expel the heat from the cold place. So according to the Newton's second law, suppose if you see, so unless or otherwise, if you don't do any external work on a material, so it is not possible to do remove heat from the cold space. So we want to do some external work on the material to remove the heat from the cold material, and you have to in order to make a substance to cool. So what is the different types of refrigeration, artificial refrigeration it is available is, so one is a vapor compression refrigerations. So in vapor compression refrigeration, suppose if you see, so here there is a liquid which act as a refrigerant, and when it is compressed, so there is a phase change will occur. So during the cooling and heating process, so the liquid will be passes through the condenser, and the condenser with condensers, and there you have a heat. It is generated. That generated heat is absorbed and it is evaporated. So during the heating and cooling, so there is a phase change between the liquid to vapor and again vapor to liquid. So initially the liquid it passes, the heat it produces, and it absorbs the heat and it becomes a vapor, and then vapor again it becomes a liquid. So you might have seen in refrigeration. So you outside you will have a droplet of So that heat will be come in terms of a water or in terms of air. So there is a phase change. And another one artificial refrigeration, it is a gas cycle refrigeration. So in this, it is similar. The working principle is similar to vapor compression refrigeration, but in gas cycle refrigeration, there is no phase change occurs like vapor. So liquid to vapor, there is no phase change occur in gas cycle refrigeration. So in gas cycle refrigeration, previously they use freon gases, but usually the air will act as a refrigerant. Then the air is allowed to pass inside the tube, and it is compressed and it is released. So there is no phase change between the cooling and heating cycles. So that is, we call it as a gas cycle refrigeration. And another one, we call it as a thermoelectric refrigeration. So thermoelectric refrigeration is nothing but which work under the principle of Peltier effect. So this here the electrical energy which converts into the hot or cooling. So that already everyone knows that. So when the two dissimilar material which is connected to electrical some thermal voltage, so one end will become hot and another will become a cold. So on the basic principle, the thermoelectric refrigeration, it works. But the thing is, when compared to vapor compression and a gas cycle refrigeration, the efficiency of thermoelectric refrigeration is very minimal. So if you want to cool a large volume of space, so it is difficult with the thermoelectric refrigeration. And the efficiency may be around some 5 to 10%. So next refrigeration, we can say it is a magnetic refrigeration. So usually the magnetic refrigeration, we can say it is a solid state cooling or solid state refrigeration. So means, so here we are going to use a solid material instead of gas. Okay, so usually in 1950s and 1960s, around some that period, 1970s, so they used to have a refrigeration by using a chlorofluorocarbon. So that it is totally polluting the environment, especially the ozone layer. So in order to avoid that, now the research are going more on magnetic refrigeration. So it is mostly eco-friendly. So we are not going to use any kind of gas. So it just replaces the gas, and we are going to use the solid material instead of a gas. And how this solid material, which produces the cooling to the substance. So that we will see what is the principle. Actually, this magnetic refrigeration, so which works under the principle of a magnetocaloric effect. So that is a main principle. So the magnetocaloric effect actually. So this we say it is a solid state cooling. So actually what we call it is a magnetocaloric effect actually. So when a material, magnetic material, which kept under the magnetic field, and if you remove the magnetic field, so there is a heating and cooling occurs in the substance, and that heating and cooling, it is removed by some heat exchangers and cold exchangers. So similar to the gas refrigeration. So here we can say, so actually first magnetic refrigeration, it is discovered by Warburg in iron materials. So in 1881, actually it is we call this process as a adiabatic demagnetization, since we apply a magnetic field and simultaneously we remove the magnetic field to the material. So here initially the gadolinium based material, so GdSO4, so the paramagnetic material which is used to cool the substance. So to achieve the low temperature, they use a gadolinium based material. So in earlier days, which gives more efficiency. So if you see, to reach 0.53 and 0.34 starting and room temperature, so they use a magnetic field of 0.8 Tesla. So that is a nominal magnetic field for this material. Okay. And here we can see what is the analog between the gas-based refrigeration and magnetic refrigerator. So what happens in gas-based refrigerator? Suppose when you compress the gas, so the entropy of the system, it remains lower. So what happens is the gas, it gets heat up, and that heat, it is taken out by the heat exchanger. And again, when you expand the gas, so the entropy, it gets increases, and simultaneously the pressure, it reduces, and the temperature also, it reduces. So there is a cooling occurs. So when expansion of gas, the cooling occurs. So there's a basic things in gas-based refrigeration. So simultaneously, even if you see in magnetic refrigeration, suppose if you take a magnetic material, so to have a magnetic refrigerator, so one thing is you should have a magnetic materials. So in magnetic material, when you apply a magnetic field, easily the material it get magnetized. So now how it works, if you see, so suppose if you consider a material, magnetic material. So initially, if you take a paramagnetic material, so the spins are not aligned. So when you apply a magnetic field, so what happens is the spins it aligns. So suppose if you take it is a ferromagnetic material, so the spins are aligned very strongly. So what happens? The total entropy of the so it is not- okay. So when you apply a magnetic field to the material spins it get aligned. So what happens is the entropy, the magnetic entropy, it reduces. So in order to compromise the overall entropy of the system, the temperature of the system it get rises. So now clearly understand the concept when you apply a magnetic field. So the spins are aligned and the magnetic entropy it reduces. So in order to compromise the total entropy, the temperature it gets rises. So now what happens is here in this, if you see here, the temperature it rises from the room temperature, just given as delta T. And now this temperature, this excess temperature, it is get expelled. So this heat will be taken away by using some heat exchanger. And now if the aligned magnetic material, now if you demagnetize this material, so if you remove the magnetic material, suddenly what happens is the magnetic entropy it reduces, it decreases. So what happens is the temperature from room temperature, the total temperature of the substance it reduces. So that's what it is given T minus delta T. So this is the working principle of magnetic refrigeration and the concept of magnetocaloric effect. So when you apply a magnetic field, the system it gets heats up, and when you remove the magnetic field, the system it gets cool. So this routine cycle will happen in order to maintain the magnetic material to be magnetized. Okay, so when you apply magnetic field, the system it heats, and when you remove it, the system it get cools. So what happens actually? So what is the theory? So suppose when you increase the magnetic field, so there is a magnetic order increases and there is a decrease in magnetic entropy. So magnetic entropy decreases. So automatically, in order to compromise, the total temperature it gets decreases. So we can say the magnetic solids it heats up, and that's what it is given. So here, in order to quantify the magnetic caloric effect, so there is a two parameter we use to quantify. One is the adiabatic temperature change, delta TAD, and another one is isothermal magnetoentropy change. So these two parameter, which determines the quantitative efficiency of magnetic refrigerations. And again, if you decrease the magnetic field, the magnetic order it decreases, and there is an increase in the magnetic entropy change. So when you increase the field, there is a negative entropy change directly we can say, and when you decrease the field, there is a positive magnetic entropy change, and simultaneously there is a decrease in the temperature. Okay. And in order to measure this, so this is the basic thing. So in order to measure this quantitative, so we use some thermodynamical formula, so called delta Sm. So we call this delta Sm, integral of dou m by dou t. So there is a change in the magnetization. So when you apply a magnetic field to the material, so the material it gets magnetized. So how far it magnetizes with temperature and with a given field. So you can apply some low field, or you can apply some higher field. And another parameter delta T, adiabatic temperature. So this adiabatic temperature, which measures in terms of specific heat capacity, the C, the specific heat capacity, and the remaining terms it is similar to the magnetic entropy change. So in order to have a large magnetocaloric effect, so you usually, if you want to have a high efficiency, then you should have a large magnetocaloric effect. Then to have a large magnetocaloric effect, you should have a the variation of magnetization with temperature should be large. Okay, and if you want to get that large dou m by dou t value or large del sm value, so the material it should be in ferromagnetic. So any kind of ferromagnetic material, usually it will give a large magnetization and it will automatically produce a large magnetocaloric effect. So at the same time, suppose all the refrigeration, it is working in room temperature. So most of the material which shows the ferromagnetic nature at below the room temperature or above the room temperature or high temperature. So another mandatory thing is the material should be ferromagnetic order, and the curie temperature it should be in room temperature, so that the operating temperature it should be in room temperature, so that we can use it for applications. Okay. And what is the advantage of using a magnetic refrigeration when comparing to the other gas-based refrigeration is it is a higher efficiency. Actually, in gas-based refrigeration, you may have some for 30 to 40%, but here you can have 60 to 70%, and it won't pollute the nature, so eco-friendly, and it is better adaptability, and it is solid base, so it replaces the gas, and long life. So you don't want to replace in gas refrigeration after some 2 or 3 years. So you might not want to replace the gas, or you want to fill the gas. So here it is not no need. So this will work for a long life. Okay. And this is a magnetic refrigeration. Actually, this is the first magnetic refrigerator, which is manufactured by the company Cooltech. So even if you see in the diagram, so here the magnetic part will be in this side. So here if you see, there is a magnetic material. So you can see yellow, blue, and red. So these are the magnetic material, and you have a magnetic field around this. So around the material, actually this magnetic material will be rotating. So this will, with the rotor, it will be rotating. So once the material it goes in to the magnetic, so magnetic field it is fixed. So once the material it goes in, so the material it gets magnetized, and when it comes away from the magnetic field, so it gets demagnetized. So that's what the figure it shows. So here, when the material it gets magnetized, so there is a heat produced, and that hot heat exchanger will remove the heat, and when it comes to the demagnetized state, so the material it gets cooled, and here there is a cold exchanger. So this will collect the low temperature part, and it will be feed to the pipe. So where you want to make the substance to be cold. So this is a phasic phenomena occurs in magnetic refrigeration. And what are the important issues? Actually, if you consider the gas-based refrigeration, usually you won't have any kind of noises in that. But whenever if you want to have a magnetic refrigeration, so the operating of magnetic field, so it will produce some noise, but that noise it is very less, 25 decibel. And already I said delta T, the temperature. So if you want to have a large delta T, so temperature delta T value, so you want to have a more accumulations, so more amplifications. So if you want to have a more delta T, so you want to have a more amplification of delta T by accumulation of cycles. So you want to have a more number of cycles. So once you have a more number of cycles, then automatically you can enlarge the value of delta T. And at the same time, in order any material, if you take magnetic material, so in order to, when you apply a magnetic field, so if you apply a higher magnetic field, the magnetic value also it gets increases. But if you want to go for a higher magnetic field, but it is very difficult, since the permanent magnet it is available only up to 2 Tesla, 2 to 2.5 Tesla normally. And if you want to go for the higher magnetic field about 2.5 Tesla, then again we want to go for a low temperature facility, so that it costs more. So whenever you consider the magnetic refrigeration, that material should give a more efficiency at a low magnetic field, so around below Tesla. So that is sufficient. So in order to have a permanent magnet, so available permanent magnet. And at the same times, in order to have a magnetic refrigeration, the thermal loss should be very low, and there should be a separate hot and cold field circuit so that it should not mingle in between. So thermal losses in the sense, so when you have a magnetic, in the last slides, we will see how the thermal losses can be reduced. So thermal losses, how can be reduced by having a different kinds of materials. Okay, so these are the important issues when you are using a magnetic refrigeration. And this is a portable magnetic refrigeration, which is manufactured by a Cooltech. So this is a portable one, and this is inbuilt in this one. Actually, this total circuit, you can see it here. So in this total refrigeration, in the back side, you can see this small part of refrigeration. And the heat exchanger, there is a heat and cold side. So that will remove the heat and cold. And that is a process. If you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, which represents the different magnetocaloric materials. Okay. And now we will see what are the materials used for magnetic refrigerations. So once you take a gas refrigeration, suddenly we can say it is a chlorofluorocarbon. But here, when you come to the magnetic refrigeration, there are a lot of material which can have a ferromagnetic nature in room temperature, and in that material, which is most cost effective and which can give a more efficiency. So in this, here I have given the Huisler alloy, Huisler material. So we call it as a nickel-lemon based material. So this material can be used as a magnetic refrigeration material. And again, there is a metal called iron cobalt nickel based material, and also lanthanides, manganites material, lanthanum, cobalt and manganites, some kind of perovskite materials. Okay, so in these materials, so we have chosen Huisler based material. So why we have chosen the Huisler based material? Actually, this kind of material is in most abundant and it is easy to prepare, and it also gives the combination of this material. Even though the Huisler alloy, if you take a individual element, it won't have a magnetic material, but when it is combined, so it may give a ferromagnetic nature when comparing to the other kind of materials. So that's what we choose a Huisler based material for to study the efficiency of magnetic refrigerations. So here we have studied a nickel-lemon based, this X will have a gallium, aluminum, indium, tin. So we choose tin, indium, and sometimes we choose a gallium. So, and we also replace this material with the manganese or nickel. So usually in Huisler material, the ferromagnetic nature of that material, it comes from the Mn. So Mn coupling. So Mn interaction. So it is having high Bohr magneton value. So due to this Bohr magneton value, so it gives a high ferromagnetic nature. And this, so once if you replace with this material, so we can alter how the efficiency. So usually we calculate the electron to atom ratio, and we see in what are the way we can choose, we can optimize the efficiency of the materials. So this gives just a comparison of Huisler alloys. So this nickel-lemon copper and nickel-lemon copper, nickel-lemon gallium, Huisler alloys compared to other kind of material, gadolinium, manganese, and lanthanum based material. So if you see, already I said the delta Sm value. So that is a character, one of the characteristics of a magnetocaloric effect. So this delta Sm value, if you see, it is very low for different temperatures. So if you see here the Tc, which represents the Curie temperature. So the ferromagnetic nature, which varies from 200 to 350 Kelvin for these three different materials. And if you see here, the gadolinium based material, it is having a high efficiency. But when comparing to the Huisler based material, so this Huisler material, which is having a high magnetic entropy change, but the thing is, here at the same time, it is in the ferromagnetic, the Tc, it is around some room temperature. The two good thing is which has the Huisler alloys. But the thing is, the temperature span, suppose if you see the low delta SM, it is around some 400, and it increases to the peak around some 350, and again it reduces. So that increase and decrease, the temperature span, it is very less to the hydroxyl alloys, but in other material, it is very high. So other thing we have to see is, in order to have a wide operating temperature, so the curve, the delta SM, that this delta SM value should be, it should show a wide temperature range. So that also another thing we have to look. But here in horizontal, the temperature span, it is very less when comparing to these materials. Okay. So, but we have chosen this material because we have a high delta SM value. And now we can see in what way we can prepare this horizontal material. So usually we prepare this material by using a vacuum arc melting furnace, and we will get so here we'll put different material in this, and we just give pass some current high voltage to the material, and it gets melted. And after that, we anneal this material with a certain temperature. Finally, we get a ingot of like this. So it is a button kind of thing material. This is alloys. So polycrystalline ingot we will get from the vacuum arc melting furnace. Okay. And then to measure the delta SM value, actually you have seen this delta SM value. So in order to do some experiment, so we use the physical property measurement system. So that is attached with the vibrating sample magnetometer. So this work is done in Center for High Pressure Research, Bharatdasan University, Tiruchirappalli. Actually, in the diagram you can see this is a vibrating sample magnetometer. So this is expanded view. It is shown here, and total data collections. So here in this physical property measurement system, so we can go up to high magnetic field of 9 Tesla. So very high field. So in order to obtain that high magnetic field, so we use a liquid helium. So actually we need a so low, when you use a low temperature, so you can we have to use, you have to use a material to cool the material in order to have a high magnetic field. So we say it is a superconducting magnet. So we are using a superconducting magnet in order to have produce a high magnetic field. So this actually, what is the principle? Someone might have studied in solid state physics, vibrating sample magnetometer. So here we will insert the sample inside. So the sample, it will be coming inside the coil. So the sample will be vibrating. So in order to get the data, the sample will be vibrating. So once it gets vibrated, this coil will pick up the magnetic flux, and this magnetic flux directly converts to the voltage and to the moment. So that is this. So this electronic part will convert the magnetic flux to the voltage, and voltage to the moment, magnetic moment. So there is a, and so it is a basic of Faraday law. So just a change in the production of voltage by changing the magnetic flux. So that's why it is working. So here, so now we will be focusing on some kind of material what we have taken in our laboratory, and how we proceed and how the calculation it has been done. So we can see. So here we have calculated, we have done the measurement for nickel lemon tin, so horizontal based material. So here this curve which shows the temperature dependence of magnetization. So we have done the low temperature measurement from 320 Kelvin to 4 Kelvin, around 4 Kelvin. So we measure the magnetization value. So here we done this measurement by cooling and as well as heating the material. So as I said earlier, we want to calculate the delta SM, the magnetic caloric effect value. So to do that, we have to measure initially the temperature dependence of magnetization. So this is a curve which shows the temperature difference of magnetization. So I will explain slightly. So here if you see, there is an increase in magnetization which represents the ferromagnetic nature of the material. So once the temperature it reduces, so there is a drop in temperature and there is a splitting in temperature. So actually it is a zero field cooled and field cool curve. So what exactly it tells is, so this material, actually the horizontal alloy, it has a both transition. So one is a structural transition as well as a magnetic transition. So in room temperature, here you can say it is a magnetic transition from paramagnetic to ferromagnetic transition. And when you go for the low temperature, so you can say this part it is a structural transition. So what is the advantages? So when you compare this material to other materials, so there will be only a magnetic transition, and that magnetic transition will give only one magnetocaloric effect. But here, so we have a combined structural as well as a magnetic transition. Then we can measure the magnetic entropy change in two transition in this region and as well as in this region. Okay, so what we do is in order to measure the delta Sm value, we performed a MH or otherwise we say it is a hysteresis loop value around this temperature. So we have varied the temperature from 325 to up to this temperature, and again from this temperature to this temperature. So usually we say this temperature as a austenite to martensite temperature, means there is a change in the structure at this temperature. So once there is a change in the temperature, the magnetization it gets changes according to the magnetic field. At the same time, the entropy, magnetic entropy also it gets changes. So I am not going to discuss the lower temperature part. So here this curve which shows the actually this curve which shows the field dependence of magnetization. So here, if you see here, in two different, previously I said we have taken the MH loop in different region, around ferromagnetic region and as well as the martensite region. So here, if you see, we have varied the temperature from 190 to 180 Kelvin, around some 180 Kelvin, 178 Kelvin, and we have taken the MH loop, so field dependence of magnetization. And again, we have taken the field dependence of magnetization around some austenite region, so from 280 to 318 Kelvin. Okay, so what it exactly says is, actually, you can see the curve when you increase the magnetic field. So there is in between this magnetization, there is a large change in the loop. So if you see here in this particular temperature and this particular temperature, so what we say is there is a more magnetic field induced transition around this particular temperature. So this more magnetic field induced transition, which can give a large magnetic entropy change in the materials. So suppose if you see in the ferromagnetic region, so here if you see there is no magnetic induced transition. So one thing is there is no magnetic induced transition, so there is no more hysteresis. Then we can say means the width of hysteresis it is very less. Then we can say the thermal loss is very less at this region. But here we can say there is a more thermal loss because we have a large magnetic hysteresis, so there is a more thermal loss will occurs. Okay, so from this curve we calculate the delta Sm value, so magnetic entropy change. So here we with some small manipulations, so we do some we calculate the change in magnetization with different temperature for a particular field. So particular field in the sense we will calculate up to 5 Tesla. Okay, so this curve which shows the temperature difference of magnetic entropy change, and this I have given for different composition. So here this empty it is given for one composition, so parent composition. So this I have given for different composition. So when you increase the composition, there is an increase in the delta Sm value. So we have a large delta Sm value for certain material, and again if you increase, there is a change in the delta Sm value, which means that when you increase higher composition, so there is a change in the E by ratio as well as the ultimately there is a change in the magnetization. So whenever you go for any kind of material, you have to calculate E by ratio. So at certain particular value, so again there the M1 M1 coupling will be changing, interaction will be changing with neighbor nickel or Sn. So that will reduce the magnetization simultaneously. That will reduce the delta Sm value. Okay, so now so far I explained a magnetocaloric effect in ambient ratio. So now we can see in our lab we have applied some pressure to the material. So pressure to the material in the sense, suppose you just compress any balloon. So you are applying some pressure to the material and you are compressing. Simultaneously, even for material also you can apply some pressure, and how the pressure which influences the any kind of physical property. So you can also study with application of pressure. You can study the magnetic property, thermal property, optical property, dielectric property. So here, how the pressure which influences the magnetic property. So why we want to study is, actually I said earlier that any kind of material, the temperature, the ferromagnetic temperature or Curie temperature, it should be around room temperature. So suppose if you see here, this delta Sm value, the peak value, if you see here, the temperature is around some 170 or 200 Kelvin. But if you see the value, the delta Sm value around room temperature, it is very less. So what we are going to do is, by applying the pressure, we are going to shift this peak temperature to the room temperature, towards room temperature. So once you shift, so you can have application in the room temperature. Now, in order to apply a pressure, so actually the basic principle how the material is affected by the pressure. So suppose if you put a metal inside the liquid, so according to the Pascal principle, so when you compress the liquid, so the total pressure on the liquid will totally transmitted to the material. So that's what the pressure it works on the material. So now we can see to in order to apply a pressure, so we take a small piece of sample. So that small piece of sample we put inside the capsules. So if you see here, so we put inside the capsule, and this total arrangement will be inside the piston. Okay, so what we do is we just rotate this piston, and when you rotate this piston, the Teflon capsule. So we call this as a capsule. So inside the capsule, we put some liquid, and inside the capsule, we put a sample and the liquid, and we close, and we put the total parts will be come inside. So once you rotate this, so you can have a pressure applied into the capsule, the top of a capsule, and that capsule will compress, and the total pressure will be occupied in the liquid, and that liquid will transmit the total pressure to the material. So that's what it gets operated. So now we will see what is the influence of pressure on the magnetic material. So here I have shown in first figure I have shown the temperature dependence of ionization. So here if you see this curve, the black curve, which shows the 0 kilobar in the sense ambient pressure. So once you apply a pressure, so automatically what happens is this temperature, so this transition actually ms mf, so that we say it is a characterization temperature. So our Martenset temperature, I'm not going in depth on that. So here if you see it is a Curie temperature. So actually this transition temperature, it shifts to the higher temperature. So the temperature around some 200, it shifts to around 250 Kelvin. And here for this sample, if you see the temperature around 150, it shifts to around some 180. So what is the phenomena? Actually, when you compress the material, so what happens is the interaction between M1 and M1. So what happens is the M1 and nickel, it gets hybridization. So there is a more hybridization occurs. So in order to have a hybridization, so it requires more thermal energy. So it requires more thermal energy. So that in terms it shifts the temperature towards the higher temperature. So that's what when you say apply a pressure. So the material M1 nickel Sn, it gets compressed, and there is a more hybridization occurs in this material. So once there is a hybridization, it requires more thermal energy, and that thermal energy will shift the temperature to the. So that's what that thermal energy, it reflects in the peak. So once you increase the pressure, so there is a shift in the temperature. So in these two figure, you can see at ambient there is a low temperature, and when you shift the when you increase the pressure, there is a shift in the temperature. Okay, so this shift in the temperature will reflect in the delta Sm value. So directly you can see. So previously we have seen some material. If you see the delta Sm, it is around some 225 Kelvin. So once you increase the pressure, the peak temperature it increases to the higher temperature. Even though the delta Sm value it reduces, but the temperature span, the working temperature, it increases to the higher temperature. And if you see here in another material, so at 0 kilobar, so it is a higher value, but at 8 kilobar, so it is a lower value, but there is a shift in the temperature. So we can we can conclude that once you apply a pressure, you can shift the temperature, working temperature towards the room temperature. So that's what we have applying a pressure to the material. But how it is applicable to practically? Suppose you have a refrigeration system. So how you can apply, because it is a some, suppose if you in even you can in hydrothermal experiment, so you just locking the piston and there is a Teflon, it gets compressed. So it is very few kilobar. Simultaneously, here 10 kilobar or 1 GPa, it is a very small pressure that you can compress it and put the material in the magnetic field by practically. So that is possible. So that's what the research is going on that. So by applying a pressure, how we can make a efficiency of a magnetic refrigeration. So here I will show another material. Actually, in the same nickel M1 tin material, so we have doped copper in nickel. So what happens is by doping the material, so again we want to check, we want to increase the efficiency, the delta Sm value. Again we want to increase the temperature span, the pure temperature. So that's what we substituted copper to nickel, and we find we vary the different composition. So here this curve which shows the temperature difference of magnetization, this ZFC FC, so it is a zero field cooling and field warming. In different way we have measured this material. So here when you substitute the copper in nickel, so due to the internal pressure, so actually this, even whenever you substitute any metal to the parent compound, so there is an internal pressure it creates. So due to the internal pressure, there may be some structural change can occur, or there may be some andesite disorder can occur. So here what happens is, so due to the substitution of copper, what we observed is there is a one just a transition it occurs called intermonazite transition. So this is due to the substitution of copper in nickel. So due to the internal pressure, there is an intermonazite transition. We call this region as an intermonazite transition. That's what IMT. So here, this intermonazite transition, so how this influences. So whenever you have some kind of internal pressure influences on this metal, so some kind of disorder it occurs in the magnetic coupling. So in terms, it reduces the magnetizations. So when you increase the copper content, so the intermonazite transition, it gets vanishes. Finally, you have a pure transition. So there is no intermediate transition. So you have a pure transition. And when you increase the composition, you see here we have seen the ferromagnetic order. It also increases. And at the same time, if you see the structural transition or the monazite transition, it decreases. So here this region it decreases. Okay. So now we can see how there is a change in the pressure of this material. So here we can see how when you apply a pressure to this material, so how it changes from the ambient to the high pressure. So here I have taken the parent nickel copper, the small composition, and we have applied a pressure on this material. So the same thing occurs. So with the application of pressure, there is an increase in the temperature. So suppose if you see here, it is around some 280 Kelvin. So once you apply a pressure, so it shifts around, it goes above to the room temperature. So then we can say that this metal can be used for a real practical for a magnetic refrigeration. So, and due to the substitution of a copper in this material, so here the delta Sm value when comparing to the nickel M1 tin, so when the substitution of a copper, so the delta Sm value it reduces. Means, so we are substituting some antiferromagnetic metal to the nickel ferromagnetic metal, so it reduces the magnetization overall, and simultaneously it reduces the delta Sm value. So that's what there is a less value of del Sm for 0 kilobar for the nickel copper M1 tin, and when you apply a pressure around some 9.7 kilobar, so there is a increase into with delta Sm value. At the same time, there is an increase in uh, temperature. So whenever if you take nickel M1 tin or gallium or indium based any kind of oil material, usually when you apply a pressure, the temperature might get shifted. But here what we observed is the temperature also shifted, and also the delta L value also it gets increased. So means the pressure, the hydrostatic pressure. So the pressure which influences the more hybridization in order to enhance the ferromagnetic nature of the materials. And this is another material. So here we took nickel M1 indium. So in this M1 we substituted iron. So whenever usually nickel M1 indium it is a ferromagnetic, and here we are substituting another ferromagnetic material. So further it enhances the magnetization. So how it enhances we can see actually. Now here if you see the delta Sm value, actually the magnetization, the structural transition also it gets increases, and simultaneously there is an increase in the ferromagnetic order, and also if you see the magnetization also it gets increases. So now once we measure the delta Sm value around for these materials, so here there is a high enhanced value of delta Sm. So here you see this is a field dependence of magnetization, so which we measured in this region. So from around some 290 to 310 Kelvin. So here around some particular temperature, you can see a large field induced transitions, large magnetic curve. So this large magnetic field induced transition, which represents there is a large magnetic entropy change. So that large magnetic entropy change we have calculated is, we have obtained is around some 50 joule kilogram. So at 302 Kelvin or for 5 Tesla. So 50 kilo I said, so for 5 Tesla. Okay, so far the material we observed, we also studied silicon doped nickel M1 tin. So in that the magnetic value it reduces, but here we have shown some material which shows a large delta Sm value when comparing to the nickel M1 tin or nickel M1 tin copper doped nickel M1 tin. Okay, so when you substitute the iron into the nickel M1 tin or indium, so it enhances the magnetization as well as the delta Sm value. So here we have got a large delta Sm value. So that also we can say it gives more efficiency to the magnetic representations. So far we have seen some Heisel based materials. So Heisel based material, so which has two type of transition. One is a structural and magnetic. And from these two transition we can measure a magnetic entropy change. Okay, so that is a one main advantage of using a Heisel material. And next we also measured some other lanthanum based material. So usually this Heisel based material always which shows a ferromagnetic nature. So this curve which shows the lanthanum based material, lanthanum bismuth solution manganese. So what happens is here too you can see when you apply a pressure, so there is an increase in the magnetic entropy change, as well as there is an increase in the temperature. So this is the one system we have studied. But the delta Sm value, if you see the delta Sm values are, so usually this kind of material will be will show a paramagnetic to antiferromagnetic transition. So simultaneously there is a reduction in the magnetic entropy change it occurs. So and another material we studied is lanthanum manganese. Yes, we saw oxynictide. We say nictide samples. So here, if you see, there is a magnetic temperature difference of magnetization. So the ferromagnetic order which occurs low temperature. So usually in any kind of iron-based material or oxynictide sample or any kind of manganite sample, if you take a M103 perovskite samples, So the ferromagnetic order will occur at low temperature. So that's why the people are not going much in a manganese material or oxygenite materials. But in order to understand the basic physics, particularly the researchers are choosing this material and they study the magnetic caloric effect in these materials. Okay, so here if you see in these materials, the ferromagnetic nature which occurs at around some 60 Kelvin, and we have also measured the field dependence of magnetization, and from that we have calculated the delta Sm, so magnetic entropy change value. So this curve which shows the different field. So usually whatever the curve previously I have shown for temperature versus delta sum, I have given for only one magnetic field. It is the highest magnetic field 5 Tesla. But here, so I have given the different field, so which you can understand that once you increase the magnetic field, 1 Tesla, 3 Tesla, 4 Tesla, 5 Tesla, so there is an increase in the value, delta Sm value. Okay. And even though in some kind of material, the delta Sm value it is very less, but there is another parameter we would like to calculate in order to understand the efficiency called relative cooling power or refrigeration capacity power. Okay, so this is calculated by integrating the delta Sm. So in order to, if you want to have a high refrigeration capacity or high relative cooling power, if you want to have a high relative cooling power value, then the delta Sm value, this range. So this is a total area under the curve. Then if you have a narrow peak, then the RCP value will be very less. So that's what it occurred in Heusel alloy. So in Heusel alloys, if you see here all the delta Sm value, it is only narrow peak. So if you see, so it is a narrow peak, but here it is broad. So if you have, it is a narrow peak when comparing to the what of the metal I'm showing now. Okay, so what it means is once you have a broad range of temperature from starting from here to here, so you have a high RCP value. So that also one parameter which quantifies the efficiency of a magnetic refrigeration. So this relative cooling power. So once if you have a large broad span of a delta Sm, then you can have a more relative cooling power. So for this material, so here you see with increasing magnetic field, the RCP, the relative cooling power also it gets increases. But here if you see the relative cooling power is very less, around some 3.6. But if you take a nano material, then the relative cooling power will be very high. So that I will explain for one sample in the next slides. So the thing is, if you take any kind of material, it should have a large temperature span. At the same time, it should have a high entropy change. Okay, so that's what the people are studying different materials. So which material can give a good, better value. Okay, so this is another material, nickel, manganese, cobalt, tin. So in that, how the pressure, the same, how the pressure it influences. So here you see, again, for a small pressure, 1 point for atmosphere, the curve it shows like this. It is in low temperature. So when you apply a small pressure, 1 GPa, so the curve it gets shifts. So simultaneously, if you measure the delta Sm value, so you have a high entropy, and as well as you have the temperature also it shifts to the room temperature. Okay, so that is the thing. So one of the main advantage of using a pressure on metal is it is to shift the metal to the room temperature for practical applications. Okay, now we can go for a, so far I have shown the bulk metal, how the efficiency, the magnetic entropy changes. Now once you go for a nano metal, so what is the thing is in nano material, so everyone know that there is a the more increase of surface to volume ratio. So due to the more increase to surface to volume ratio, so what happens is there is a lot of magnetic spin disorder occurs. So due to magnetic spin disorder, so what happens is simultaneously there is a reduction in the magnetization, but so there is a reduction in the magnetic entropy change, but we can increase the large relative cooling power. So usually the nanometal metallic glasses composites. So that is the nano composites from metallic glasses. So they found a promising magnetic refrigerant material. That is one magnetic refrigerant material, and that gives efficiency of around 60%. So when comparing to the bulk material, and here this is one material. It is present here. So iron nickel M1, it is a nano material. So directly you can see the delta SM value and the temperature. So here the delta SM value with increasing magnetic field, if you see, it is only around some 1.2. The value it is around some 1.2 to 1.2. But if you see the span of temperature, it is very large, from low temperature to around some room temperature. So this gives a very large relative cooling power of the material. So here this is the material iron nickel M1. This is the material it is shown here, and this is the other material compared to this material. This is the other material for comparative. So how the relative cooling power it changes. So previously we have seen in this material. Suppose if you see the relative cooling power of this material, it is around some 3.6. So around some 3.64. Okay. So now when you go for a nano material, so there is a lot of, due to the large of spin disorder in the surface to volume, so the magnetization it reduces. So that's what the delta SM value, it is very low, but the RCP value, the relative cooling power, it is very high. So that is another parameter which is more needed for the magnetic refrigeration, and that can be obtained in the nanomaterials. So here you see we have got a 470 joule kilogram, and the temperature also around room temperature. So relative to room temperature, some 330 Kelvin. So if you see all the material, so the relative cooling power, it is having a very high value. So one advantage of using a nanomaterial is you can get a high RCP value when comparing to the bulk material. So that is the one advantage by using a nanomaterial. Okay. So now I will conclude my talk. Actually, so what we need is, in order to have a magnetic refrigeration, so what we need is we want to have a high ferromagnetic material, and that ferromagnetic material, it should be in room temperature, and also simultaneously you should have a high RCP value. So this three parameter, it won't come for any single material. So that's what people are going for, different kinds of materials to have at least one parameter to be high. Okay. So at the same time, when you use a nano material, so usually the magnetic entropy change, it is influenced by the particle size. So that is the one thing we have seen previously, and also a large distribution of magnetic anisotropy. So there may be different magnetic anisotropy which influences the magnetization, and which also reduces the magnetic entropy change. Okay. And finally, what I can conclude is, so most of the system which is having a first order magnetic transition, actually, if you have a, so there is a second order magnetic transition, there is a first order magnetic transition. Magnetic entropy change to the first order magnetic transition, it's somewhat, it will give some error. So what are the equations, the delta SM value which can be used for second order magnetic transition. So but most of the system which shows a first order magnetic transition, and this structural transition may cause extra hysteresis in the sense. So once you have more hysteresis, then what happens is there will be a more thermal loss will occur. Okay. So you have to choose the material, and in order to control the hysteresis, and we should have a more magnetic entropy change. So that magnetic entropy change can be got by choosing a proper material, by doping some material in different sites. That is also important. So suppose if you dope a copper on nickel or M1 on tin, so different size dopant also, it changes the magnetic interaction, and simultaneously it changes the magnetic entropy change. Okay, so mostly the people will wants to choose a iron and M1 based system with a lower cost, and the sample preparation for a nickel element based Heisel alloys with replaced by other element, it is very easy when comparing to the other materials. So that's what I make a conclusion. And finally, I make a highlights that so even when you use a magnetic refrigeration, when comparing to the gas-based refrigeration, so usually the gas-based refrigeration, the cost when you come with the cost effective, it is very less. But when you go with magnetic refrigeration, the cost will be more because we are using a magnetic metal, and that magnetic metal we want to have apply magnetic field. So the when you go for a high magnetic field, the cost also will be more. So that will influence the when you want to buy a magnetic refrigeration, the cost will be high, but the preparing cost, the material cost will be very less. Okay, so that is the main disadvantage when you are using a magnetic refrigeration. But still, the researcher, the company is called Cooltech and Generic Electric (GE). These are the company they are focusing to make a prototype magnetic refrigeration with a low cost, around some 15 to 20,000 they are making. So by using a magnetic refrigeration, the thing is you can control the pollution. So and also we can also control the pollution in ozone layers. So that is a one main aspect to use the magnetic refrigeration. And this magnetic refrigeration will be come around some 2022, around some 2025. So still it is under process. But in abroad, still they are using this magnetic refrigeration at high industries. So in industries they are using. So that is my talk. So I will complete with this. So share if you have any queries, you can mail to me or you can ask now. So thank you all, and thank you the organizer and the institute, and thank you for the participation. Thank you.